I'm Lel from Made by Marley, and today I'm going to be showing you how to upcycle an old chair, giving it a rustic, vintage, chippy, even a little bit bohemian finish that fits in with cottagecore and your farmhouse decor. We're going to be using chalk paints for the chair, and I'm going to use IOD stamps to make some fabric. I've got an old piece of sheet which we're going to make some fabric for the chair. So follow along and watch me turn this chair into a thing of beauty. So here's the chair we're going to be working on today. It's not a thing of beauty as yet. I'm painting the underside because there's nothing worse than something looking like it hasn't been finished when it's turned upside down. I give that 2 coats of paint. Now I'm starting on the legs, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of do 2 different colours and blend them, not so much in my first coat, but get my colours on first. So I'm starting with a pink chalk paint, I think it's called Flamingo, and I'm mixing a custom colour here with some ochre chalk paint, some pink chalk paint and some antique white chalk paint, and it's made me a sort of peach colour, and I'm mixing the peach and the pink together, maybe not blending them at this stage, but I'm just getting all my colour on. As you can see, I use 2 different brushes. I want lots of texture in my first layer, so I'm using big thick crosshatch strokes, and my little thin artist brush is building up lots more thicker texture. And I just work my way around the chair. I kind of work in sections as I go, and I just add in the colours kind of like alternately, you know, so the pink on each side, then the peach in the middle, on the legs, on the base and on the back of the chair. So you can see me just mixing these all in and making sure that I put plenty of texture in, using the paint thicker and thinner in different areas. And you can see this close up here where I've went in a bit thinner, where I've went in a little bit thicker. The brush strokes, I want all that texture because it's really good to put a finish over the top of paint that's really got layers that have been built up into it. Now this is me doing the fabric, so I'm measuring a piece of fabric the size of the cushion that I want to cover. And what I do here is I'm using the IOD stamps. I'm using Lady Challot and the Penny stamp to get a rough design of where I want to start printing. So I'm going to print my design first, and I'm using stayz on ink because I'm going to watercolour these at the end, so I want my ink to stay and not run. So I'm starting off and I'm using my ink pad, and I'm just putting it back straight onto the back of the stamp, nice and damp, so that it really, you know, because the fabric will absorb the ink really well. And this is me just making sure that I get my positioning correct. Now when I put a stamp down, I hold it with one hand in the middle so that it doesn't move about, and then what I do is I'm quite slow when I do this. This is me, I've missed a little bit of corner, so I'm not lifting the stamp up, I'm just kind of peeling back and touching that corner with the ink pad so that I've got all of my, it's really important, I always think, that you get the outside of the relief. You can maybe lose some bits, but you always have to make sure that the outside, and I just go over it and I sort of touch it all over so that the whole print has printed onto fabric. It's the same with doing it on wood or anything. This is how I do it. One hand steadies it and stops it moving, and the other hand moves around, and that's it. You can see me doing exactly the same thing, and I'm just going round making sure that all of it has touched the fabric so that I get a really nice crisp clear print. And this is what it looks like when you lift it off. And I'm just going to keep on working onto my design as I go, with the same sort of process each time, and I'm filling it out with different kinds of leaves that from the 2 different sets of the stamps, and it's just the same process. And this is me just showing you inking up the back of the stamp and then just pushing it down onto the fabric. And my design's nearly finished now. I'm just putting some little stems into my design because you can't just have things floating in the middle of nowhere. They need some sort of grounding, and this is how I kind of tie it all together and make it look like it's been one piece of fabric that has been designed. Now I'm using watered down acrylic, really watery. Pretend it's like you're doing a painterly sort of watercolour effect on your fabric. I don't mind if it runs over the lines of where I've printed. I just want that sort of watered down sort of lighter and darker areas of my flowers as I go, and this is it so far. And I've used the same colours in my watercolours that I'm going to be using, and I have used in the distress of my chair, so that it all ties together at the end. And this is me just merrily painting in all the little bits, and here it is once I had finished painting it all in. I hung it on the washing line to dry for a little while, once, because it was still quite wet. And this is me going back to my chair at this point, and what I'm doing now in my second coat is I'm just blending everything together and mixing it and making sure that I have no kind of where one piece of paint starts and the other piece finishes. So I just repeat this until I've finished the whole chair. I'm heat sealing the acrylic onto the fabric, and I sprinkled a little coffee greens on just to age it a little bit. I'm applying a little piece of white highlight here because I do want to put a stamp on it on this part here. Even though I'm going to heavily distress the chair, I just want that piece there a little bit lighter. This is me going in with a palette knife, and this is me starting to build up all the layers of chippy distress. And this is the part where you just really get creative about it and just make sure that you kind of really kind of work at putting as much texture and different colours of chippy onto it as you can, depending on what colours you're using. I used like a raspberry red, a kind of peach, darker peach, an ochre, a light green and a dark green, and I just applied those. So I apply it and I blend it slightly, and then I let that dry a bit, and then I apply more chip until I've just covered it. And here I've given you a really good close-up of what I've done. You can see the texture in the chair. It looks like it has had multiple layers of paint. It's chipped off through the edges, and I haven't got the greens on at this point, but you can see I've got the kind of raspberry red onto it. I've ran a scraper on a palette knife and distressed my edges, and I've just kind of really built up the layers and texture. I've added a bit more white onto it, and it's still got a little bit, this side still got a bit of work to go to, but the corner was finished. And what I'm actually going to show you here is, because I'm start pointing to it, is how I work in sections. So this would be one section, and this would be one section, and this would be one section, and that leg would be one section. And you just work in your sections until each piece is the way you want it and you're happy with it. Adding the chip and distress, sanding areas back, splashing paint onto it. You really can't, you just go free. And this is me now. I've got the same IOD stamps, and I have painted another bit white so that some areas were damp, so that it didn't come out in one clear image, because I want it to look like it's been worn. People have been leaning on the back of the chair and the design's worn away over time. I'm just using the acrylic paints again, like watercolours. I'm using lots of water and watering them down, and I'm just kind of roughly sort of filling in and kind of sort of painterly sort of watercolour effect again onto these like half stamped flowers. I didn't want really crisp clear. It doesn't go with the chair now. It's had all its distress and finish onto it. I wanted it to look like very vintage. I asked Martin to get involved in here. I looked at all the staples and thought, oh, I'm not doing that. So he kindly did it for me. However, underneath, there was millions more. So I asked him just to cut it off at that point. It's all going to be covered up with the dust cover anyway. So I'm just cutting off the excess of the fabric that we printed off, because you don't want to have too much fabric sitting underneath the dust cover. So I'm just getting rid of what I don't want. It's always better when you're printing fabric to print too much than too little. I'm lining it up. I'm making sure that I've got it where I would like it to be, that it's central, that my design sits nice. And once I'm happy with that, I just flip it over. And then you work in diagonals. So if I do one here, I do one at the opposite side. And then if I do one there, I do it at the opposite side. I pull tight, but not too tight. You don't want to pull your fabric too tight. It'll pucker and it won't look nice when you flip it over. And then what I do is I put a nail, I use the nailer on either side of those the first 4 tacks that I put on, so that it's all kind of not going anywhere at this point. And that's me just finishing that. Corners, I pull away from me, and then I kind of fold them so that the corners are not puckered and all wrinkly. And you have to keep looking at the front to get this right. and you just keep working away, making sure that you staple your fabric down really well. Sometimes corners, some work perfectly and other ones can be a little bit more tricky. It's all in how you fold them. So this one here's been a little bit more problematic. And just put plenty of staples in it and staple it all down nice and tight and secure. And then what I'm doing is I'm just making sure that there's no sort of loose pieces of fabric anywhere, and it's going to sit nice, and that's how it looks so far. I've shown you there's no puckers on the corners. I'm going to take some scissors and I'm just cutting off the excess on the sides of that side there, and there's another piece that I cut off and I give it a wee staple. And I'm putting the dust cover back on. There was nothing wrong with the dust cover that was on it. It was nice, it was clean. So I'm just doing the same thing again, opposite side to opposite side to get it on first, and then I'm just going around and making sure that I'm stapling it all back down. Now, I would hate to think how many staples are actually in this chair now, considering how many I've put in and how many were in before. But it's all covered up. It looks pretty. It's not rough to touch. It's nice and smooth. It doesn't feel nasty, so it's good. And there we have it. And it looks really nice. I mean, it really does. It's a nice finish. And here I am, all over waxing my chair and fitting my cushion on. So here we have our finished chair. You saw me from start to finish. Make the chair, we started with our blend, and we blended pink chalk paint and a custom chalk paint that I made myself with, and it turned out to kind of be a big sort of peachy colour. And then what I did was I distressed it with a roller, a scraper, a toothbrush, you name it, and I put all the distress colours in, and I'll list all the colours that I used in the comments section. And then what I did was I made stamped the fabric with IOD stamps, the Lady Challot and the Penny stamp. I then watercoloured the fabric, then I heat sealed it with an iron, and then I covered with a ear nailer and covered it all up with that. Finished it off with some more stamping, and I tried to make it look like it had been kind of half rubbed off, looked a bit vintage. So if you've enjoyed this video today and you're into upcycling and furniture DIYs, blending furniture, home decor, cottagecore, if you're into any of these sorts of things and you want to see more, please consider subscribing. And if you push the bell notification, you'll be notified every time we upload a new video. And if you want, please share it and give us a big thumbs up. And Martin and I will see you again in another video. Thank you.